our history. Buildings and people and memories and dreams. Who better to tell us than those who were there? There's so much to learn from the stories they'll share. Living history. Living history.
Hello, and welcome to Living History with Ted Goldsborough. Today we're at the Beaumont Retirement Community in Bryn, Mawr, and we'll be listening to the interesting life story of Mrs. Gladys Baker Reynolds Monier. Hi, Mrs. Monier.
How do you do?
So glad that we could be together today. Thank you for participating. We have, what we're going to do is we're going to look at pictures together, and if you'll tell me what you remember about the picture and where it occurred, then I think the people in the community will be interested in your life story. How about that photograph?
Well, that just happens to be when we were married, and this is my first husband. We were married for 45 years, and then he was ill and died.
What was his name?
His name was a very long name, but he was called Lex Reynolds.
Okay.
And his family lived in Merion.
So he was a local person too?
Well, his father was a dentist who lived to, he was 98 years old, and he was famous as a dentist in Philadelphia because he was the one that they all had to take their bar exams or whatever they called the exams.
I see.
And so he was very well known throughout the country, and he was a wonderful man.
And how about these pictures?
Well, that's my mother-in-law and Lex, my husband, when they lived in West Philadelphia. That's where he had his office there. And then there's a picture of the two of them, the Dr. and Mrs. Reynolds. And
did he
had an interesting life.
Where did he grow up in?
Down in Delaware.
Delaware.
Yeah.
Okay, but your husband?
Oh no, in West Philadelphia.
Okay, but did they eventually move to Lower Merion?
Yes.
Uh-huh.
Yes, after he retired, they built a house there in Merion.
The dentist?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, he was retired then.
Is that Winding Way?
Yes,
All
on
right.
Winding Way.
All right. Not too far from the Cynwyd School.
That's right.
All right, all right. And how about these pictures?
Well, that's my father-in-law and his two brothers and a sister. That was down in Delaware,
I see.
where they grew up. He was orphaned when he was, I think he was 14 years old. He lived on his own.
Wow.
And
Gee.
he wanted to be a doctor, but he could never save enough money to go to medical school.
Wow.
But he became a dentist. And if you could pass the test, you could get into dental school in those days.
Was the dental school in Philadelphia?
Penn.
Oh, Penn.
Penn.
Okay.
But originally he used to do printing. He was in a print shop of some kind, and he was quite a gay blade in those days. But then he finally got enough money to go to dental school.
I see.
So, which is what he did.
I see. Do you have an approximate years of when he might have been at dental school?
Well, he had retired by the time Lex and I were married, which was in '34. So I'm not quite
1900 maybe?
Yeah.
Okay, approximately.
He was when they had the big reunion at Penn, which I think they still have, and they had somebody carry the flag around Franklin Field. At the age of 98, he walked around Franklin Field carrying the flag. And he was quite a remarkable man.
If there was longevity there, why didn't your husband live longer?
Well, because cancer took him, and it was...
How old was he?
He retired when he was 60, because he worked for Leeds and Northrop Company, and if you had worked there for 40 years and were 60 years old, well, he went there the day after he graduated from Penn, and he was 60, so fortunately he retired, and we moved to Florida at that time, which I'd always said, don't ever ask me to live in Florida.
But you did.
I did, and lived happily there.
Okay.
But we had a home in Maine, so I did not have to stay there in the summertime because I hated hot weather.
How many years after your husband retired did he pass on? About 10, 15?
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
About 10 years.
And this is a picture of?
Oh, golly. When he was a Boy Scout.
Your husband?
Yes.
Lex, all right.
I have no idea who the other young lad was.
And the date on this says 1919.
Well, we used to always laugh at that because he looks very sad. So we used to tease him about being homesick.
And I think this might be Unwinding Way.
Yes, that's
right.
Dad Reynolds and Mother Reynolds.
All right.
That's their home in Winding Way.
And he was the dentist.
He was the dentist.
Okay. And here's a picture of that house, still standing.
Yes. It went through one very sad era when it wasn't painted, but somebody has taken it over now, so it looks better.
Good.
But it was very sad to see it looking so badly.
Now, there was just a husband and a wife that lived in this big house?
No, the two sons, my husband and his brother, were there when they moved there.
Okay. I thought this was after he retired. The dentist retired.
Yes, it was.
Okay.
But his two sons were there. See, he was pretty aged.
Okay.
And because he's the one that lived till he was 98.
Yes. Okay.
And my mother and father. And
their family name?
Baker.
Baker.
He was Frank Baker. And my mother was also Gladys, so I was always called Little Gladys, which I didn't cherish.
Mother and daughter with the same name.
Right.
Yeah. And where would that picture have been taken?
I presume it was at their home, by what I can see of the picture behind them.
Okay. And where was that?
They're on Bala Avenue.
Okay, the Bala Avenue home that we've talked
house.
about before.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that was, my father was very active in Methodist affairs, very, very active. He was president of Methodist Hospital for many years. And so that he was also president, I guess they called it then, of the Philadelphia Stock Exchange for a while. So he was a very active man.
I see. And he passed away 1972?
Yeah.
Okay. Did he live a long life?
Yes, he was in his 80s, late 80s.
Okay, good. I guess this is another article about him.
Yes.
Okay.
There's some of his activities.
And then, I guess, is this a house that you and your husband lived in?
That was the one on Derwin Road.
Okay.
And that's where we lived till my youngest was born, and then we needed a little more room. Okay. So we moved to Howe Road in Merion.
All right.
And that's my husband. I don't know what that top picture is. He was abroad doing something.
Trip to Europe, 1926.
Yeah, which was a thing to do, of course, after you graduated.
Take a world tour or
yes,
whatever.
or do something.
Before you got down to business.
Exactly, because he went to Leeds and Northrop the day after he graduated from Penn.
See. Maybe this was his junior or senior year
Could have
in the
been,
summertime.
probably.
Yeah. Would, I'm thinking of my generation, many of us worked in the summer in high school. Would that have been true in your day? Would your husband have worked in the summertime?
Oh, yes, because he commuted back and forth to Maine. He would come, in those days there was a very good night train that came up from Wayne Junction, where Leeds and Northrop was at Wayne Junction in those days.
Wow.
And he would get on the train late Friday afternoon, and I'd meet him in Bath, Maine at around 5 a.m. the next morning.
Wow.
So it would give him, then he wouldn't go back until either Monday or Tuesday, so it would give him a long weekend in Maine.
So the trains were much more used or more accommodating?
Yes, it was a great train. It was the Bar Harbor Express, they called it.
It sounds so fun to me.
Yeah, and it was very, very convenient for him.
Now, he wouldn't have a sleeper. He'd sit up and...
No, it was a sleeper.
Oh, okay. So he'd have a bed on
He'd
the
have
train.
a bed, so it was not bad.
Boy.
And when we'd go to Maine, originally, at the beginning of the summer, I always did that end of it, so he didn't have to do that.
I see.
And coming down, the same thing. So...
boy, that sounds like fun. You talked, I think you mentioned that you had a sister or two.
Oh, dear. That's a picture of my sister Nan, who now lives in Wyoming. And it's quite a glamorous picture in Palm Beach.
In her two-piece bathing suit, I guess?
Something that, yes.
Has a cape around her?
It was quite something in those days.
Could you tell me about, just a sentence or two about the Wyoming?
Well, my sister went we went to the ranch when we were teenagers. Mother and Dad thought it would be good for us to be there and get a little taste of the Western life. And this ranch was the original dude ranch in the country. The three brothers that started it lived in Pittsburgh, and they came out to one of the Dakotas to have a cattle ranch. And it was so hard to get there in those days because no railroad didn't go through at that time. So you had to take stagecoach and whatever. And Howard Eaton was quite famous and a very good friend of Teddy Roosevelt's. And in fact, there's a trail in Yellowstone named the Howard Eaton Trail. And so these people that would come out there, and then they'd want to stay because it was so hard to get there. And eventually they moved to the location where they are in Wyoming. And again, they wanted to stay. And so therefore they said, we will pay for our food. And that's the way the first dude ranch started.
So we call that a dude ranch.
Yeah.
And that means that city people or somebody can come and stay there.
Stay there, and you are provided with a horse. And they're very careful about, they have a great many horses. It's a very large ranch now. But my sister still lives there and her family.
Now, what was her connection? You know, her name is Nan, but how did she get connected with the Eatons?
Because she went out there quite a bit. She wasn't very well one year. They had a winter ranch down in Rimrock, Arizona. And that's where she really got to know Billy Eaton, whom she married.
I see.
And
so she became the wife of one of the owners of the...
Yes. Yeah, right.
And then you had an incentive to take your family out because your sister was there.
Exactly.
That's neat. And you had another sister who married a man named Anthony?
Yes. And they live here in the area.
Okay.
She's at a retirement home. The two of them are now.
Okay. And I guess then we have a picture of the Derwin Roadhouse.
Yes.
Okay. And I'm a lover of cars, so let's talk about this car.
My husband needed a car because he was at Leeds and Northrop, and it was hard to get to without, almost impossible to get to without a car. So he got that car so that I could have the decent car, and we called that the hack.
Is this the decent car?
That was my original first car. When I was old enough to drive and going to Friend Central, then I was thrilled to have a car. So that was my car. The other was called the hack.
Both of them we would love to have today.
Yes,
yeah.
The poor old hack.
This is a Model A Ford. It looks like about a 1930. This is about a 34 Ford, a V8, one of the early V8s. And I just drool over this. This would be worth $50,000 today, probably. And then we have, I think, your husband and your daughter, I think.
That's right.
Yeah, such a nice picture.
I love that picture.
Yeah.
So she's grown up to be a wonderful daughter and a great help to me.
What was her name?
Karen Hires.
Karen Reynolds Hires, okay. And we have a coincidence audience because my sister and Karen were in the same class at Lower Merion. So I've known Karen Reynolds for many years, and now she volunteers for the Lower Merion Historical Society. But this is about your family and not me. Now, I put this one in because of the playpen.
That was Karen and her brother Ross, who now lives in Toronto. But he graduated from Lower Merion and then went on to Yale. But a playpen was a marvelous thing, and I don't know why they are so banned by people. Because if you didn't put them in and make them stay all day, but if you wanted to do something and have them safe, playpen was the place.
Right.
This is sitting outside. He'd have been all over the yard, and I'd have been chasing him.
Yes. And it looks like you might be sitting here supervising.
Exactly.
Right. And this is such a handsome playpen.
Well,
so well made.
They were nice, roomy ones, and you gave them toys and talked to them and had music and.
Great. But it's something that is almost taboo now, almost.
Yeah.
And you and I don't understand why, because we thought they were great.
Well, it was heavenly.
Now, were you one of the early families in the Howe Road house?
We were the second family there. He was an artist that lived there. And it was a great house for children to grow up in. It was wonderful. So that we lived there until they were all out of the house, except my youngest, who's a good deal younger.
Okay. On the back here, it says purchased circa 1946. So Karen would have been about 10 years old when you moved here, approximately?
A little younger than that.
Okay. And what section of Lower Merion is this?
That's in Merion. Merion Park, I guess they call it. I'm not sure.
And what was that park? You know, this was what was there before that?
There was a racetrack there, which I don't remember, but always hear about it. It was quite famous as a racetrack. It was all in that area. And then they built the houses there.
So I'll interject. The racetrack was from 1876 to 1926, about 50 years. And towards the end of its time, in the 1920s, the horses gave way to motorcycles and automobiles. And the famous automobile racetrack, Barney Oldfield, supposedly came and drove his race cars there. But it became a bit rowdy and noisy, and it finally closed down around 1926. And then the Depression hit in the 30s, 29, 30, so the land stayed vacant for quite a while, and I guess that's where your farm produce stand was using that land, probably.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
Now, as you were a mother, did you get involved?
I was quite active in school affairs, and I had very good friends, parents of Karen's friends, and Ross's friends, who were very active too. So that we did a lot then. We were the first group that started the after graduation party, which turned out to be very successful.
That was the first one.
That was the first
class
one.
of 57, an all-night party, and it was held at the YMCA, and that was
Right.
my class, Ross's class in 1957, and Mrs. Reynolds was on the committee to plan for that.
Yes.
Now, what about the Red Cross?
Well, I was very active in the Red Cross during the war. I was chairman of Volunteer Special Services in Cynwyd, and we had a very active group. So I was very fortunate to have some help at home, so and the kids were in school, so that was fine.
What kind of work, I mean, volunteer, but did you go around and recruit people? Or?
I recruited practically every doctor in the area to teach first aid.
Oh.
So we had some wonderful classes in first aid.
Were they held at hospitals or churches? Or?
No, usually in our headquarters, which was across from it was where originally was the first post office there. I don't know what's the first post office.
Oh, in Bala, over the bridge.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, where their flower shop now and whatnot.
Yes.
So we had very nice offices there, and a lot of them were there. Or they'd go to the Cynwyd Club and lots of places.
Okay. Your husband?
Yes.
Okay. And then maybe down at the shore?
Yes,
Maybe
this was
Ventnor?
our house in Ventnor,
Okay.
which Karen and I were down there a few years ago, and I was dreadfully disappointed. That's the house that
it's been stuccoed over?
it's stuccoed with an ugly gray stucco. And the nice schoolyard across the street is no longer there. And we had this big lot between the house and the thoroughfare, the water. And that's another house has been built there. So I really was very disappointed because I had lots of fun times there.
I'll show this for those of us who grew around in Philadelphia. The famous
Elephant.
Lucy the elephant.
Right.
Right.
And that originally was supposed to be a hotel of sorts. And then they had a restaurant there. And somebody told me it is no longer there. But I thought it still was.
I don't know.
I don't know. But that's Karen and Ross there in front of the elephant.
But it was a landmark.
It was quite a landmark.
Yes. Now let's go up to Maine, if we could.
So that's our home on an island in Maine where we spent many, many, many summers. And that's where Ross in particular learned how to manage the tides up there because our superintendent on that, we had to go by our own boats, and the island had a small boat, and the superintendent on the island used to go back and forth to pick up people that worked on the island, carpenters and whatever, a secretary that came out there. And Ross went back and forth for a bottle of pop, they called it, a day, and Bill Bithis, who taught him all this about navigation and whatnot. So it was very, very nice, very interesting.
Now you would only be there what months of the year?
Well, when the children were in school, we were there during the summer when they were not in school. Eventually, after my first husband died, my second husband and I he was retired, so we would go up there early and stay late.
Okay.
Because October is a gorgeous month in Maine.
Yeah.
But we finally moved to the mainland because living on an island and going by your own boat when there were very few people there at that time. But it was in the summer, it was very active.
Booth Bay Harbor?
Booth Bay Harbor Yacht Club, which now is a motel, big motel.
Wow.
But they have they call it a Down East Yacht Club. Boothbay Harbor Yacht Club moved out further because they taught a lot of sailing, kids sailing.
Okay.
And there were no room in Boothbay Harbor for the
Too
boats.
congested.
Yes.
Okay, okay.
So it's still going, but it's not there. Oh, well, that's my second husband, and we traveled a lot because he was retired, and we were in Switzerland at that particular time. I had gone to college in Switzerland, so I've always loved it dearly there.
And let's see, we have a picture. With the Western outfit.
That's out at the ranch. That's my 3 children. And
so this is Karen, who's here in the room with us,
and Ross and Hugh.
Hugh, okay. We haven't mentioned Hugh yet. Does Hugh live in this area?
Yes, he does.
Okay. And I showed this because it's got the Lower Merion Academy here, but who is this?
That's Ross.
Ross. Who?
He played football, and I guess by the outfit he's got on, I don't know what age that was.
Junior high.
Was it junior high?
At Bala, Cynwyd.
And because they played football, and he played football at Lower Merion, and they were never defeated.
Yes, that's right.
And,
that's
so
right.
it was.
Oh, that's right.
Yes.
That's worth mentioning.
Every team was out to beat them.
There are 32 consecutive wins in the 1950s, about 55 through 57. And Ross was on those teams. I'm glad that you mentioned that.
Right.
That record has never been broken, the 32 consecutive wins to my knowledge. All right, and here
also their track team was very, very good.
Won the Penn relays.
Yes.
All kinds of, yes.
There was no what do I want to say? There was no junior high school. Or not junior high school. Harriton was not.
That's right.
So there was just Lower Merion.
That's right. We had one school,
so
it was bigger, and you had more.
Yes. They had some marvelous athletes.
Now, is this later on?
Oh yes, I don't know. Can't tell
Ross
you,
and Karen and Hugh.
And Hugh, when they were.
But they're in their 20s or 30s by this time.
I would think so.
Okay, and we're getting toward the end here in our time, and I very much appreciate your meeting with me and sharing your life with me. Karen thought that this would be nice to show. Could you tell about?
Well, I got into needlepoint because TV is so boring. I had to do something while I was watching TV. And so I started making Christmas stockings. And first of all, it was just for the children. Then eventually the adults said, we want them, because our stockings look so awful when we hang them up at Christmas against these.
Yeah.
And so I've made 46 altogether.
Wow.
And enjoyed every bit of it.
Well, now to summarize our time together here, can you reflect on your life?
Well, it was just a very interesting time. We did not have to. When my children were growing up, we didn't have drugs. And I think that made quite a difference. And also the parents were much more active in volunteering. And people don't seem to, we have some wonderful volunteers, but an awful lot of people will not get involved. And in those days, Cub Scouts, very popular, lots of parents helped out. So I don't know what it is, but we've noticed here at Beaumont, because I've been here 22 years, and in our gift shop, we don't get people to come in and volunteer, and it's a very pleasant place to spend a couple of hours. And you get to meet people, and you'd think the new people coming in would like to, but we're having difficulties. So that's a big change I've seen.
Yes. Well, thank you so much.
Well, you're very welcome.
Sharing
it was
your life with us. And I thank your daughter Karen for arranging this. Please join us again next time on Living History with Ted Goldsborough.